Pigweed here. Today we review a dopplebock and discuss lady ballers. Hello and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crow Hill. Good evening, Crow Hill.
Good evening, Pigweed.
What is on your mind?
Well, I've been watching romantic comedies with Mrs. Crowhill for quite a long time.
Well,
they say that you're much more likely for things to turn out well if you watch a romantic comedy.
yes.
So over the years, I've discovered that romantic comedies have become less raunchy.
Nobody you know.
Yeah,
Hey,
I'm
The
kind of
Notebook.
surprised. I'm kind of surprised because 15 years ago, romantic comedies typically had mandatory sex scenes, foul language, other kinds of things. Nowadays,
They're more wholesome?
You get to the end of the romantic comedy and you say, did they even kiss? It's amazing how much more G-rated romantic comedies are.
Well, what do you know?
And so this idea that everything is getting raunchier, I'm not seeing it in the romantic comedies.
So you're kind of going against your own cultural conservatives who say that Hollywood and entertainment are getting raunchier and wokier.
Well, at least in this area, yeah. But and maybe in others, but we'll have to discuss that. But before we discuss that, I was at a German restaurant recently, and I ordered this beer, and the guy said, this beer is so good they named it after Jesus. So here's Paulaner Salvator, a dopplebock, and of course doppelbocks almost always end in ATOR for some weird reason.
Yeah, this is like one of the oldest brewed, continuously brewed beers.
Yeah.
In the world.
It's been around for 400 years. Yeah, it's an old brew. And doppelbocks, as we've said before, were brewed partially for the monks to survive on during Lenten fasts.
Yes, liquid bread.
Which brings up bad memories for you, I know, but
oh my gosh!
Don't
try it. They say that a man could live on doppelbock alone, but
maybe
I
not.
don't recommend it at all.
Yeah.
I've tried it.
Yeah. So it's going to be sweet and it's going to be boozy.
All right.
And it's going to be malty. That's what we should expect.
That's what we're going to expect. And does it have a 7.9? Let's call it 8.
7.9. Okay, right. Quality and heritage brewed with uncompromising standards that strictly adhere to the Reinheitsgebot, using only 4 ingredients: water, hops, yeast, and malt. For nearly 400 years.
It smells like hay.
Hay.
It doesn't even. It's not just bready. It's not like cooked bread. It smells like wheat before you even make the bread.
Okay.
I love it.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but now that you mentioned it, I am smelling that a bit. Yeah, but it is. I like it. It's delicious. I don't want to drink more than one of them because it's very. It's kind of rich and.
Yes, and it's cloudy.
Yeah.
Interesting. But it's lovely, and is it seasonal? Not really, right?
No, this is a year-round
Right.
beer. Paulaner Munchen since 1634.
Yes, the polished monks of Munich, Germany.
Just a couple of years before our birthday. So,
all right, so back to lady balling.
lady ballers, yes.
So we're talking about the cultural takeover by the left.
Yes.
And what the Daily Wire, which started out as just strictly a journalistic outlet,
Yeah.
has decided to get into entertainment,
Yeah.
thinking, well, rather than just griping about it,
Let's do something different.
give people an alternative.
Yeah.
And so they started making movies.
Mm-hmm.
They made, and these aren't Hallmark, wholesome, conservative.
No, Run, Hide, Fight is not like
No, it's about a school shooter and a girl that fights back.
And then the other one where this woman is being like her husband is trying to get to her. What was that one was called?
Yeah, that was I forget the name of it, but that was scary.
It was not a sweet and nice movie. by any
No,
stretch,
and then Terror on the Prairie,
Yeah.
something like that. And it's an old west. Again, I mean, there's nothing
too
sweet
often
and cuddly about it.
Too often when we think of conservatives trying to make movies, we think of these poorly acted, badly written, low production quality, preachy movies.
Preachy. Well, yes, you can see the message coming from a mile away.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's not what they've done. Good for them. They got into some kids content
because they actually
too.
have some people like Andrew Clavin on staff who is a legit
professional writer,
and a legit artist in his own right. So they do have an artistic sense there at the Daily Wire.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so what they've decided is pluck the lowest hanging fruit that no one will dare pluck.
No one else. Here's this great big fruit sitting there, and nobody else will touch it.
Yes, something that would have been so easily pluckable even 10 or 20 years ago.
Yes.
They have decided to do Lady Ballers, which is about the silliness of having men compete in women's sports.
Right.
All you have to, if you pitched that idea 15 years ago, they go, "Tell me more. I like it." So how do they do this? And now we're like, "Oh, there's no trickery. You don't have to prove anything or sneak anything. You just say you're a woman, and you can get."
Now that is one of the complaints that some of the critics of the movie have made, is that they'll say, wait a minute, Lady Ballers makes it seem like all you have to do is say, I'm a woman and you compete in women's sports. And I'll say, no. You have to have gone through like at least a year of hormone therapy.
I mean, in some places, the guy who won the bench press championship in Canada just walked up there
and said I was a woman.
and said, "There's nothing in your laws that say I have to produce anything at all."
Right.
And then just crushed all of the laws
Right.
and walked away.
So
Crushed all the records.
I think that particular criticism is a little disingenuous for that particular reason, but also because, okay, so you took hormone therapy for a year. That doesn't change things all that much.
You've already gone through. I mean,
you've already gone through puberty.
You're already a man. You're in college.
Yeah.
Big deal.
You've already got the musculature, the bone density, the upper body strength, all these other kinds of things.
So your testes have shriveled.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. Great.
So Lady Ballers is you want to tell the plot and
Yeah.
what's
So
in story or not?
the basic idea is there's this coach who is having a hard time in his life. His life hasn't turned out very well. He's having a hard time with his former spouse.
But in the past, he had been a championship.
He had been a championship
in basketball.
dude, yes, and he was doing very well. And now he's kind of fallen on hard times, and he's not. He has a bad relationship with his wife. His daughter doesn't particularly respect him, and he wants to get back in the game. So he realizes that he has this opportunity here. If he can get his old basketball team together, and
so these guys are about 30, right?
Yeah, and they were good, but
yeah,
they're kind of washed up and they're not so good anymore. And if you can get them back together and have them compete as women in women's basketball, then he has the opportunity to be a winner again.
So there you go, and the jokes just write themselves.
Yes,
at that point,
yes, they do.
right? So it's just only because it is. I watched White Christmas recently. Sisters.
There were never more devoted sisters. Yeah, all right.
So Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby, who are the boyfriends of the actual sisters who sing the song,
right,
do a little bit where they pretend to be them. And men pretending to be women is funny. Guess what? Since the beginning of time, to Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe, to yesterday, men, till Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah. Men pretending to be women is funny because everybody knows that men are not women.
Everybody, that's the funny part. Guys, boys and girls out there.
Yeah.
And so then when this low-hanging fruit became available, and nobody in Hollywood thought
Nobody
that this
would
could
touch it.
that this would be funny.
And they had a problem when they tried to put this movie together. They had a problem getting actors because
Yeah.
everybody knew that to be associated with this movie, they would get canceled and it would destroy their careers because Hollywood has no sense of humor.
No,
and they
don't make comedies, and they don't.
And they have no tolerance. And if you do this, then you're blacklisted and you're done.
Yes, but somehow being super tolerant means not having any tolerance.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yes.
How does that even work?
Yeah, that's
only
the
in
way
Hollywood.
it works. No,
Only on the left.
that's the way the left operates. Is like tolerance means actually no tolerance.
Yes.
So, why have there been no serious comedies produced in like the last, 6, 7, 8? You used to have Mel Brooks. You had all these different comedies coming out regularly.
Because at its core, your jokes are making fun of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if we've become so thin-skinned as a culture that making fun of anybody except for straight white guys is forbidden, all you're left with is making fun of straight white guys. And guess what? How many funny jokes can you do on that?
Yeah.
So you can't, right? You can't do.
People are too thin-skinned, and they can't tolerate any sort of anything that might be perceived as being negative or critical or discriminatory or any of these other kinds of words, and it's terrible because we've been. And no, honestly, I've never been a huge fan of comedy movies anyway. I've seen a few, but it was never really my big thing. So I don't particularly care. There haven't been a lot of comedies, except that it says something about the culture. It says that we've lost our sense of humor.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's like 1,000 other mid-level 80s and 90s comedies.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great.
No, it's not great. It's not.
Right? It's not comedy gold.
No.
But it's got some laughs, and it's making some points that that everybody else is afraid to make, and so you get people watching going, yeah. I think the reaction is more of, why hasn't
anybody else made fun of this? It's so easy to make fun of this. Yes, and some of the criticism about the movie is it's so dumb. Like they're saying, okay, what you're saying is washed up men who haven't played basketball for 10 years can beat even the best female basketball players. That's just ridiculous. Well, okay, yes, it is ridiculous. That's you're missing the point. You're missing the point, which is that having men play against women is inherently unfair.
It's not ridiculous that they wouldn't win. They would win. I mean, unless they're totally out of shape.
Yeah, well, they were. That's the thing. I mean, these guys were way out of shape, and it's been many, many years since they've actually played.
No, I think if you took a team that went to the national championship in high school
mm-hmm.
and didn't play together for 10 years, and then they played together for I don't know, for a couple of weeks, would beat almost. I mean, they wouldn't beat a professional team, but they would beat most. Well, I don't know. They might be the professional women's team.
They might. I don't know.
I mean, a high school team beat the U.S. women's team,
yes.
who was supposed to win gold in the world, and this was just like
in soccer.
In soccer,
right.
It was just like the best team in this county in Texas, or something like that. So.
Right.
I'm sorry, ladies. Good for you. Play all the sports you like, but we know what's going on here.
Yes.
And this is what this is the joke was. So I was expecting this thing to just get hammered from all sides, and on Rotten Tomatoes it got a 95% score.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty amazing.
What is going on there? Does that mean that liberals aren't even deigning to review it?
That would be a good argument, except it just doesn't sound like that.
No, it doesn't, because generally speaking, if something offends the left, okay,
it could just be something far more minor than a national nationally released movie.
Yeah.
It could just be like somebody in some hometown could offend somebody, and they just come
Reminds me of
swinging.
the story. Reminds me of the story. P.J. O'Rourke was riding around campus with some leading conservative figure, and they're driving by this, and there's this demonstration, and P.J. O'Rourke says to the other guy, "How come whenever somebody offends the left, you've got this organized demonstration? They've got these professional signs. They've got these slogans. They've got these chants and slogans, and it's all organized. They got the press. Everything's going on. And when somebody offends the right, you get two people from Young Americans for Freedom waving American flags. And the guy says, because we have jobs.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
To some extent,
so there's something funny about this 95%.
To some extent, the left exists to protest things. So why aren't
what
they
else are you doing
protesting?
except for, if you're spending most of your day trying to be offended,
Yeah.
they told you this was coming months
Yeah.
in advance.
They-
You
yeah.
knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so they acknowledge that they got 95% positive, and then they run down. One reviewer wrote,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what?
Yeah, so I looked at an article by Newsweek, and it says, here's this, it's pathetic, poorly written, blah, 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 wrote one person.
So it wasn't even like the guy who reviews films for Newsweek.
Yeah.
He just saw on Twitter.
Found someplace
Some
somewhere.
guy said.
Yeah.
Yeah, here go. This is a reviewer for Decider magazine.
Decider, oh yeah, sure. What is that?
John Serba.
Okay.
And he describes the film as racist, sexist, transphobic, and anti-Semitic.
Yeah, of course. Because it's produced by a company that's owned by a Jew.
An Orthodox yarmulke-wearing Jew.
Yeah, he's gonna have an anti-Semitic film that
Yeah.
he's gonna bankroll. Sure.
And boy, that's gosh, where did you come up with racist, sexist, and transphobic? That is original. You never hear people
Nobody ever throws those words around.
Terms around like that.
But anti-Semitic, that's funny.
That
I don't know where
anti-Semitic
he
is the
got that
funny one.
Yeah. So, I think here's one from an article in Newsweek. I think the movie is transphobic and unfunny, and the unfunny part reminds me of the person. Somebody makes a joke, and the other person is just so serious. That's not funny. Well, no, it was funny. It's just that you're too kind of hung up to recognize that it's funny. There's a certain attitude that puts correctness, moral correctness, whatever.
But there's a
above.
snootiness to unfunny as opposed to not funny.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah.
So, I liked this one from Out magazine.
Mm.
So they said the comedy film about trans athletes is the worst thing we've ever seen.
Now, Out, isn't that one of those, camping magazines?
No, not that kind of Out.
No.
No, that's Out of the Closet.
Oh, okay.
And actually, they say right in the title, the trailer. So they didn't watch the movie. They watched a minute and a half
Watch the
of the trailer, and it was the worst thing we've ever seen. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
I like this here. So it wraps up its anger by saying, so, if watching middle-aged men in bad wigs beating up women and making fun of them is what gets your engine going, then check out Lady Ballers on the 4th-tier streaming device, Daily Wire.
But that's the whole point, is we're criticizing the idea of men beating up women.
Exactly. So, in the movie The Campaign, just Zach Galifianakis
Yeah.
and Will Ferrell,
Mm-hmm.
they're out there trying to out-kiss babies, and
Okay.
they get into a scuffle, and one of the guys punches a baby.
Oh, my.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in this context, that is funny. It ruins your career because it's so opposite of what you should actually be doing.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, so if you laugh at that scene, it doesn't mean I would be so funny if I was at Walmart and somebody punched a baby.
Yeah, no, you're
No.
not saying
What
that.
you're saying is the total 100% inappropriateness of punching a baby is the funny part. Just like the inappropriateness of a man beating up a woman, of a man who says he's a woman and then punches women in the face. What we're saying in the movie is that is so inappropriate. That's the funny part.
Yeah.
No one should ever do that in the world. And then the reviewer who watched a minute and a half of the trailer says, "Oh, so if you like to see men in bad wigs beating up women, we don't want to see that. That's what makes the movie funny, you dummy."
Yes, every comedy movie is going to have something that.
Also, you think if a man steps on a rake and the rake hits him in the face, so you think that's funny every time you see it? No, but when the Three Stooges do it, and I know that it's a joke, then that's where the funny comes in.
Yeah, the whole idea of funny is that isn't this stupid, and we don't want to see this kind of thing happening.
Yes, how humor works at the base level is you are sharing with your fellow human beings how you recognize what's wrong with the situation. Your laughter is saying, "Hey, I too recognize how ridiculous it is for a man to punch a baby, for a man to dress as a woman, for man to dress as a woman and then beat up another woman. That's wrong."
Yeah.
That's humor 101.
So what I'm seeing in a lot of these negative reviews is the word unfunny, which, as you said, is a strange word to use. Unfunny. Yeah. I'm also seeing hate, of course. I'm seeing transphobic, and I'm seeing toxicity. That's a word that comes up a bit. And the thing that they're missing is when people are saying, "No, the problem with this movie is that they're not the men aren't the butt of the joke. Women are." No, listen. The butt of the joke is this insanity that says that men should be able to compete against women because they pretend that they're women. That's the butt of the joke, and that's the thing.
Can't get that joke.
97% of the population says, "Yeah, I understand why that's funny." And
but our cultural betters are letting you know you're not allowed to think that that's funny, even though it's always been funny until 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. On MSNBC, somebody said, "I refuse to watch such trash of a film, but the trailer and reviews of it make its toxicity plain." Yeah, so never mind, actually. Remember when what was the movie with the little girls who were overly sexualized on Netflix?
Yeah. The Mignonnes, which is the name of the original French film, but yeah.
Right, yeah. And a lot of people were criticizing it, and if you hadn't watched it and criticized it, people would say, "Oh, how dare you criticize this movie without actually watching it? You didn't get its artistic blah, 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 blah." But these people are perfectly fine criticizing it based on the trailer or based on the reviews without having ever watched it.
No, you don't. Yes, they don't need to watch it. No, what is that? Yeah, that although that was almost the opposite. The criticism was more about Netflix's selling of the film.
Yeah.
Like the French version,
Cuties.
Yep. The French version showed girls coming back from a shopping spree, skipping down the street. The American version, the Netflix release of it, showed them in sexy little outfits, thumping and pumping and grinding. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate message of it was that it was wrong.
Yeah.
But it was sold by Netflix as, "Hey, watch these prepubescent girls dance sexually," and and actually the cinematographer was a little, he was zoomed in a little too close, so there was some problems with that. All right, we're not talking about that.
But let's, if you don't mind, let's back up a second and just talk about why does a movie like this get made? Like, let's talk about conservative art and the lefty takeover of culture and that sort of thing, because that's a theme on the right.
Yeah, which might be overblown.
Yeah,
because the left has always pushed the envelope, as they say, on culture and art.
Yeah.
Right. Going to the extremes. What is socially what is unacceptable, and culture needs that.
Yeah, sure. You need to explore new. So,
But there also needs to be pushback, and then that's where the creativity comes from. When a person comes out and says, "I am going to make a movie where I'm just chopping people's heads off all day long," and everybody goes, "That's great." Well, you need the outrage.
Yes.
You need the creativity
pushback,
comes
yeah.
from the tension.
yes, and you have to have. Society has to be exploring new things. Otherwise, it's stagnant.
Yes.
So you have to have that impulse, but you also have to have the impulse of saying, "Wait a minute. If we go that direction, maybe we're going to destroy everything."
We have things we need to preserve.
Yes.
And all of this tension is just fine, but there is plenty of quality content that is not.
There's a lot of stuff that comes out of Hollywood that is not lefty garbage, and we get the impression sometimes. From
You know what?
on the right,
You know what it is? It's the stuff that makes money, like Forrest Gump,
Yeah.
or not the Titanic.
Yeah.
They're not doing it to make money. What I'm saying is that has widespread popular appeal.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other? The Gran Torino, I thought
Sure,
was
yeah.
great. Saving Private Ryan.
Remember when the biggest selling movie of all time for
E.T.
decades and decades was Julie Andrews and
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a good movie with good values, and the thing is, yes, we need people pushing the envelope, trying new things, but Hollywood also produces quality stuff that has a good message and is interesting and has a good story. And unfortunately,
they're not all perverts raping each other.
Well, even if they are all perverts raping each other, they still, from time to time, for one reason or another, produce.
I guess because they need to turn a profit.
Yes,
and
because they need
that's
to make
one
some
thing.
money.
Because,
Yeah.
I was saying before, earlier before the show, that we need to pull up the Oscar winners over the last 20 years to see how the Saving Private Ryans and Gladiators about 15 years ago fell off to movies that nobody watches. Mm-hmm. And now that they have all of this new criteria of what the content has to be, how many women and minorities need to be in what positions before you qualify for an Oscar.
Yeah.
And then they're like, at some point, I guess they decided, well, we're just gonna make endless numbers of superhero movies and see if we can make money on those.
They've totally lost the idea of quality, and they've reduced it down to these box checking stuff. They've just said, no, you have to have a trans producer or something. So that's what determines whether a movie's good, not whether people like it or it has a good plot or anything like that. Yeah. So one thing that I think is a little interesting is if you think of personality and art, and
what is it called? Not Breaky.
Benke. Yeah.
All right, eventually.
Okay. So if you think of personality, like the 5 personality characteristics: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. And if you look at what personality characteristics map more towards conservatism and what personality characteristics map more towards liberalism, generally speaking, the things that map towards liberalism correspond with artistiness, and that that's the kind of thing that people have known this for. They would say those artsy fartsy liberals. That's the normal thing to say.
Yeah.
So the idea that the creative arts, would be dominated by liberals is not at all surprising.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you'd expect, actually.
Sure.
So there's always going to be some level of push in that direction by the nature of things, by the way people are put together and by the way things work. But even despite all of that, we still get now. This actually makes me wonder, though. You know, you think in the hundreds of years ago, the same thing would have been true. The really artsy people would still have been liberals, but they would have been doing things on behalf of sponsors, right? They weren't just like producing something and then trying to get the masses to like it. Generally speaking, they had a king or a prince or a somebody.
Oh, I see. We're talking.
Who would commission them to do some great work of art, right? So in a way, there was kind of a reining in of the artistic impulse, where you're saying,
good point.
Where you're saying, here I am, I'm the king, and I want you to do this great work of art, and somebody comes off with this crazy thing, and no, not that. You know, it's got to go this direction. Where now, it's a different kind of a market, where you don't have that same kind of sponsorship and interplay between the people in power and the artists.
Right, and the rise of independent movie making and independent television making, right? It's not controlled by a handful of Hollywood executives or music executives. People are making music, and so with that, you're getting more extremes, lots of crap.
Yeah.
But lots of really good. The amount of quality content. You used to think that you get 3 networks and a few Hollywood studios. That's all of the creative, smart people that exist. And then now, I mean, how many Netflix, Amazon, Peacock,
right? Yeah,
who come up with really brilliant series? Like I'm amazed at how much talent is out there.
I know. Yes, it is pretty amazing. And it used to just be Hollywood. Now you've got all these Netflix creating their own stuff, and it's pretty
Amazon.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. And it's not. A lot of it is. Does have bad messages or lefty kind of stuff to it, but not all of it. There is some stuff in there that's actually pretty good. Right. Interesting.
So I think what the Daily Wire is right in saying, don't just whine about it.
Yeah.
Let's make some alternative content.
Yes.
And let's compete. Let's give people options. And what about children's shows?
Right. So Daily Wire recently launched this thing called Bent Key. Seems like a dumb name.
It is a weird name.
It's a weird name.
I didn't like it right from the very beginning. But what they were, I think they are people who grew up on the magic of Disney.
Yeah.
Who have been so disappointed.
Yes.
By the direction that Disney has gone.
And unfortunately, if you look at adult content has not been anywhere near as slanted to the left as children's content. Children's content has just been destroyed. It's disgusting what they're doing with children's content. So Bent Key has decided they're going to make their own children's content, and there's this one thing, Mabel McKay, I think is her name, and it's basically a ripoff of Mr. Rogers.
All right.
And it's very similar to that. There's this other one called Runes, which is and these aren't just like preachy. We're gonna tell you about Milton Friedman and Ronald Reagan and the Bible. You know, it's not.
Show.
Yeah, exactly. It's not sticking conservative values in your face.
It's just leaving out.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. It's just leaving out all the crazy crap that the leftist media has been trying to feed us. And so Bent Key has these interesting kids shows that are
Chinchilla Family.
Yeah. Yes. I've watched a couple of them, and they're good. And the idea here is we're not trying to push conservative. The left is trying to push leftist values on you. What Bent Key is doing is they're not trying to push conservative values. They're just making good shows.
Yes, it reminds me of the show we had about the increasing divide about from left and right,
Yeah.
where the right is standing exactly where it's always stood.
Yeah.
The left runs as fast as it can to the left and turns around and says, "Why is there such a division between us?"
Right.
Right? So they're not coming up with fresh new conservatism. They're going, "No, we're just standing where we've always stood.
We're just making a
we're just
decent
not
show
moving into
crazy land.
Into crazy Three Daddies land."
Right. Yeah. So anyway, Lady
Anyway.
Ballers. I think it was. I'm not a huge fan of comedies. I enjoyed the movie. It wasn't great, but it was good. It was worth watching. It's funny.
And it wasn't so much as it said. It reminded you about what's not being said.
Yes.
It's like, why aren't you? Why aren't
How
we,
come
why
nobody else is making fun of this? Right. Isn't it such an obvious thing to make fun of? Think of all the jokes that you heard growing up. I mean,
Right.
this is such an obvious thing to pick on and make fun of.
Yeah, a guy walks in high heels in a wig, and you go, "That's a man with high heels in a wig, trying to disguise himself." That's funny.
Yeah.
And now it's like the most. Oh no, it's not funny. It's not funny.
It's unfunny.
It's unfunny.
It's unfunny.
Sorry. And then, although they got in a couple other ones, the dig on divorce, where the coach is like, I think our impending divorce is having an effect on our child. She's like, "You think?" And then she just ran down a bunch of statistics about. Of course, what do you mean it might be having? What kind of selfish moron are you to think that you can have a divorce and it's not going to horribly and irreparably damage your child, and you go ahead and do it anyway?
Yeah.
Well, that was a nice little dig.
That was a nice little dig. There were a lot of little digs in this movie, and honestly, I would like to see fewer straightforward cultural digs like that. I'd just like to see like a good movie that's a comedy or whatever it is that doesn't have the leftist stuff and takes some mild digs at leftists.
Yeah. A little more show, don't tell.
Exactly.
as they say.
Yes. Yeah, that would be good.
All right, two lady balling.
Lady Ballers. Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.